Hey, thanks for pressing play on this episode of The Forgotten Hockey Players of Broadway, a nostalgic look back at my favorite Rangers from the 60s, 70s, and 80s. Here are your hosts, Tom Browning and Rob Berger. Thanks for tuning in to the 13th episode of The Forgotten Hockey Players of Broadway. I'm Tom Browning, along with my co-host, Rob Berger. Rob, how you doing today, bud?
I'm doing great. How are you, Tom?
Not too bad, thanks. It was a great holiday weekend. A lot of hockey this past weekend. A chance to watch the Rangers, and I'm sure you had a chance to watch your little Blue Shirts as well as your Kings out in L.A. Any thoughts on what's going on with the Kings, since they're in a lot better position right now than obviously the Rangers, who've been eliminated, in getting to the playoffs?
Well, I think we're all looking forward to this. Will be the last hockey podcast of us for the forgotten seasons of the New York Rangers. We'll hopefully forget. 2017, 2018 will be long forgotten.
Yeah, that's true. But it might be the start of something really great. So as a Ranger fan, I hope that's certainly the case. But the player we're going to profile today, a Ranger that really made his mark during the 1978-79 season as a rookie when the Rangers went to the Stanley Cup Finals against the Montreal Canadiens, and that is Don Maloney. Don Maloney was, of course, a second-round pick for the New York Rangers, actually their first selection for the New York Rangers when they drafted him. He made an impact right away when they brought him up from Hartford, or I guess it was New Haven at the time. Played for the Kitchener Rangers in junior hockey, and then drafted by the New York Rangers. The Rangers didn't have a first-round pick that particular season. He actually was their first selection, the 26th overall selection, but their first pick in the second round. Yeah, he made an immediate impact with the Rangers when they brought him up to play along the left side of for Phil Esposito, and at the time, Donnie Murdoch. That line went on to become known as the Mafia Line, with Phil Esposito, the Godfather, and you had the two Dons, Donnie Murdoch and Don Maloney. What is your recollection based on what you've seen?
Yeah, sure. Important thing to note is that was a terrible draft. It was probably the worst draft of the 1970s. Only one Hall of Famer in that draft, and that was Slava Fetisov, who doesn't really count.
Yeah, that's true.
As he played in the USSR, and it's also important. The draft was different. That was the last of the amateur draft. You had to be 20 years old to be drafted. So Maloney came up right away, but he was 20 years old. Unlike today when the kids are 18. In 1979 they instituted the entry level draft for the kids. So he played at Kitchener as a 20-year-old. Had a huge year, and just over 60 games, he had 104 points. So he came in ready to go.
Yeah, he was a very kind of unique player by New York Rangers standards. He was a real grinder. He was very good on the penalty kill. He was a very good defensive player, very good offensive player. He was so diligent. He was so dogged when it came to digging the puck out of the corners. He had an uncanny ability to really win so many battles, digging the puck, taking the puck away. Matter of fact, Phil Esposito compared him very favorably to Wayne Cashman. He said that, other than Wayne Cashman, he never had a winger who was able to dig the puck out of the corner to feed him the puck like Don Maloney. He was physically tough, mentally tough player. He was very determined. He was a tremendously hard worker. He was a grinder personified, and he really exhibited that. When the Rangers brought him up, I guess it was December or January of that particular season. He did well in the minor leagues. They brought him up, and he immediately went to the left wing. Donnie Murdoch was on the right wing, and he was the sniper, and of course Espo the center, and Donnie was the left winger. And I believe he had like 26 points in 28 games that year, 9 goals. He carried over right into the Stanley Cup Finals, where I think he set a rookie record for assists in a playoff series. I think it may have been broken since then, but at the time I think he was number one.
Yeah, it was most points ever for a rookie in a playoff year.
Yeah.
7 goals and 13 assists. And in fact, the only person that had more points that year was Guy Lafleur.
Wow.
So it was a heck of a playoff run for him.
Yeah. He was very, very – it was funny. I know we talked about it last week when we did this show on Espo, how Fred Shiro thought he was going to be burying Esposito when he put the two kids on that line. But as it turned out, that they really lifted the Rangers that particular season. And like you said, it did carry, right off into the playoffs. And while Donnie Murdoch, because of off-the-ice problems, fizzled out, Don Maloney and Esposito, along with Dean Talabas, really became a very good line for the New York Rangers when those three played together during the late 70s and early 1980s. And, of course, Donnie had 5 consecutive 20-goal seasons. Twice he scored 29 goals. So, while most of his goals were of the, they call the dirty variety, he was very good down low. He would fool the goaltender once in a while with a long slap shot, and he was, he held his own on breakaways, but most of his goals were around the paint, the blue paint. He was a very tough hockey player, and Rangers were always known for their skill and not known for the grinding play. He was one of the few that could look back and say that he really made his mark as a very tough left winger. And really, Esposito was quoted as saying that he extended his career, Espo's career, that is, a good 2 seasons. He felt if he didn't have Don Maloney digging the puck, feeding him the puck, he may have retired or forced to retire a lot sooner.
Yeah, well, what you alluded to, he called Maloney the best left winger he played with since Wayne Cashman. Like you said, Fred Shiro had a quote that he said his scoring was a bonus, that he was a bumper and grinder. It was so important on the power play, so important in the corners to open up space for Esposito.
Yeah, that's very true. And I remember some of the games that he played, Maloney, he seemed to always play his best against the best clubs, whether it be the Boston Bruins, the New York Islanders. He really had some very memorable games against the New York Islanders. He really was one of those players that did rise to the occasion when he played up against the top talent in the league. And, the game that probably sticks out in my mind, obviously, most Ranger fans, is, the 1984 playoffs, the Patrick Division Finals. I believe it was Game 5 at the Coliseum, and the Rangers were down by a goal, and they had to pull the goalie. And I'll never forget, they had Mark Pavlich was the center ice at that particular line at that time, and you had Don Maloney, and I believe they put Pierre LaRouche was the right winger for that particular series, and Pierre LaRouche, of course, was a great center iceman with the Pittsburgh Penguins and the New York Rangers, truly a bona fide goal scorer. I believe James Patrick brought the puck in over the blue line, fed Pavlich, who shot the puck, and I believe Smith made the save, and then on the rebound, the puck popped up in the air, and then Donnie Maloney knocked the puck out of midair, and it was a very controversial goal because there was some thought that the puck was hit above the shoulder, the height of the shoulder, which of course should have been an illegal goal if that was the case. And every time I see the replay of that, I can't determine whether it was illegal or not. I think it was one of those that could have gone either way. But the Rangers went out to tie it, only to lose a heartbreaking overtime when Kenny Morrow beat Glenn Hanlon, and that was history. One of the most exciting playoff series ever that I can remember. But Don Maloney was very clutch and tied that game up.
Oh, and a fun thing to point out about Maloney and is one of the few Rangers to put on both shirts. Yeah,
that's true.
In fact, he's the number 2 all-time Ranger and Islander combined points.
Yeah, well, right. That's one of those trick questions, I guess. He had 16 goals with the Islanders, right? I think he played two seasons with them. I think one year he didn't have. I think the end of the second year, I don't even think he played a full season. I think he didn't score at all. I don't believe. I could be wrong, but he had 16 goals. I think his first year with the New York Islanders. Yeah, that's right. He played for the Hartford. Oh, well, the Hartford Whalers thing was very memorable because he was traded by his dear friend Esposito.
That's right, mid-season.
Yeah, he looked up to Espo as a father. Literally, he was really a father figure, a godfather figure, but a father figure to Maloney. He loved him dearly. He really, really considered Espo his teacher, his mentor, and to this day, he says he was very hurt by the fact that Espo traded him to Hartford. But I guess the reason that Espo cites was that Michel Bergeron, who's the coach at the time for the New York Rangers, didn't like Maloney's style of play. I guess Bergeron was more of an up-tempo, believed in skating type of thing, and I guess he put a lot of pressure on Espo, who was the GM at the time, to trade Donnie Maloney. And Espo said, "Listen, I get paid to make those tough decisions, and it was a tough decision to make." But he said he had to do it. So, that was a very controversial move at the time.
Yeah, and it was right at Christmas.
Yeah, that's right.
It's a great point you bring up about his style of play. His style of play was meant for the '90s. As the '80s progressed with 60-goal seasons and just speed and huge power plays.
Right.
As a grinder, he would have fit in great in the hook grind 90s.
Right. Or the 60s, I guess.
Or the 60s too as well.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. But, you know, to say that he was a grinder is true, but he actually played in 2 All-Star games. He won an MVP when the game was played at the Meadowlands back in '84, I believe. He won the MVP of the All-Star game. And so, you know, he did appear in 2 All-Star games. And, you know, 11 seasons with the Rangers, 20 years total, I guess, when you consider he was an assistant GM with Glenn Sather. Actually, before that, right, he actually, how many players do this? Although it happened twice with the Islanders. He actually succeeded the legendary Bill Torrey the very next year after he retired, right, Rob? He became the GM.
Yep. Absolutely.
I mean, my God, what a thankless job. Yeah, Bill Torrey retiring and I guess staying on as a consultant. But the Islanders have done this twice. The Islanders did this with Garth Snow, right? Garth Snow retired as a backup goalie for the Islanders and immediately became the GM. So the Islanders have done this twice in the last 20 or 30 years or so.
Yeah, you know, Maloney had a decent run as a GM.
Yeah,
he's had ups and downs. You know, he had a great start in Phoenix before the organization really fell apart. He was the GM of the year in 2010.
Yeah, the first one.
With some solid teams that, you know, they never won a playoff series, but they were top of the division regularly. Unfortunately, he had to sit through the change in ownership multiple times and the arena problems and really the dismantling of that club.
Yeah, that's true. Like you said, he won the GM award in 2010 now. That was the first year they had the GM of the Year award, and he won it. GMs at the time thought he had one of the best skills at identifying young talent. As a matter of fact, I guess it wasn't until he lost his power struggle with Dave Tippett that other GMs around the league thought that he was building up one of the greatest stockpiles of talent in the league. I mean, he pulled off some really, really good deals in stockpiling talent, and they feel that if his peers feel that if the Coyotes ever turn it around, and it looks like now they're showing some signs of doing that, it could be thanks to some of the moves and some of the deals that Donnie Maloney made. I mean, look at the trade he made with the Rangers, right? When he gave up when the Rangers traded Anthony Duclair, I think it was two first round picks and a second round pick for Keith Yandel. I mean, that was an absolute steal for the Arizona Coyotes, and he did the same with a few other moves he made. He drafted Ekman, right, the defenseman. So he's done a very good job, like you said, in identifying good talent.
Yeah, you know, it's always a tough situation to be in when you don't have the support of ownership in making moves. And he had the whole Kyle Turris situation that was difficult. Yep. You know, but he's back in hockey. He's scouting with the Flames.
No, he's actually VP now. He was actually promoted to VP. Yeah, it's funny. The GM, I think his name is Trevelling. Trevelling is the
yeah, sure.
Yeah, he was actually under Don Maloney. He was Don Maloney's assistant at Arizona, at Phoenix. He returned the favor when Maloney lost his job with Arizona. Trevelling hired him as a scout, and now he's, I think, the VP of player development. So he was given a VP title before the season started. But scouting is definitely player development is definitely his forte, and you know, Ranger fans and pundits feel that when he became Glenn Sather's assistant, I guess it was 2000, I believe, he joined the Rangers organization. That's when the Rangers started getting their act together and becoming more competitive. And his first year as as an Islander GM, I believe they went to the conference finals, right? I believe that first year they went to the conference finals that year and lost his first year as a GM. So he, like you said,
that was the year they lost to Montreal.
Yeah, that's right. So yeah, his career, like you said, has had some real highs and some real lows. But yeah, so he's still with Calgary now, and he seems to think that they're on the right track. They have a very sound ownership situation there, and they've got a very sound management team structure, and their goal is to do it the right way. Where with, I guess, Phoenix, when Dave Tippett won the power struggle, I guess it was if Tippett got tired of losing, as good as a coach he is, I guess he feels it's time to notch some wins and to expedite the process, but possibly at the expense of, you know, tearing down for the sake of winning now. Yeah, so Don Maloney was a very interesting player. He's very fondly remembered. He played with his brother Dave, of course. Dave was the youngest captain in, I believe, New York Rangers history, and Dave made it easier for him to assimilate to New York. Yeah. And they really enjoyed playing together. And by far, Don Maloney was the more aggressive of the two. Dave was not as tough of a hockey player as Don was. But, Donnie never backed down. The Maloneys were never great fighters, but Donnie was a little better and a little bit tougher. But, yeah, he contributed some very clutch moments for the New York Rangers. Yeah,
but both of them do, It's great that we're talking about Don Maloney as a Ranger, because I think he gets, as we live with Dave Maloney, on a regular basis, if we're still watching Ranger games this time of year, we're with him. But Don Maloney fits in great to the theme of this podcast, the forgotten Rangers who had such a great run, especially at the beginning of his career, but and not so great era for the Rangers, where they were overshadowed by other teams, especially the Islanders. It's great to talk about a guy like Don Maloney.
It really is. And back in '79, after he had that great season, I don't know if you remember, Rob, but Ranger fans my age will definitely remember, he appeared in two national commercials when the Rangers took Canadians, that was very competitive Stanley Cup Finals, at least in the beginning it was anyway. The Rangers cut a Vidal Sassoon jeans commercial. Ooh la la, Sassoon was if you go on YouTube now, Ranger fans will remember those commercials that played nationwide. You had Ron Duguay, you had Ron Greshner, Esposito, Don and Dave Maloney were in, and Anders Hedberg were in those commercials. And my God, you look at those 1979 commercials right now, you just shake your head. And then he had one for 7-Up that also include Magic Johnson and Dave Kingman. So I urge Ranger fans to go take a look on YouTube just to look back and remember those commercials that was so prevalent, that was so ubiquitous back then. I mean, that's all you saw with those 7-Up commercials. And Donnie Maloney made a name for himself. He really did. And that was just playing half a season of Rangers hockey, and he was thrust into the national limelight. And another thing that Ranger fans will remember Donnie Maloney for, he was very animated. He'd get very excited when he scored a goal. But on the other side, he was I forget the term he used, but his face, he wore his emotions on his sleeve, but he was always never satisfied with the shift. He'd always go back to the bench, gritting his teeth, shaking his head. He was never satisfied. And that's one thing Ranger fans will always remember. He always, that shaking of the head, that grimacing of the teeth, that saying, oh, darn, gosh darn, I should have done this or I should have done that. He's, he really wore his emotions on his sleeve, and I think Ranger fans really appreciated that. You always knew what he was thinking and feeling when he played for the Rangers. So those are kind of my memories of Maloney, was his animation, his enthusiasm, his never being satisfied. So that's how, in wrapping my thoughts up, that's kind of how I'll always remember Don Maloney. And it's been nice if, the Rangers give him a little bit more recognition, but I guess when you're working with a competitive club, I guess it's tough to do that.
And, one of my favorite things to look at, as I wrap up as well, is he got to wear number 12, which was the number that Esposito started with the Rangers.
Yeah.
And Andy Bathgate wore number 12 also. And really haven't had any other big names wear that number. I love the history of hockey numbers, and especially I'm not saying the Rangers are going to retire that number, but as the Rangers are starting to respect their past more with retiring of numbers in the past couple of years, it's nice to have a good discussion about that.
That's without a doubt, Rob. That's a great point. Yeah, he probably will never come back as a GM of the Rangers because of his age. He's probably, I guess he's late 50s. I guess born in 58. So if I'm going to be 63, he's going to be, I guess, close to 60. So I guess with Jeff Gordon at the helm right now, I guess his career in Ranger management is probably a foregone conclusion. But yeah, he'll go down. He'll have his memories as a very good regular season player, very good playoff player. He had his moments as a front office exec. So, yeah. So, any closing comments? Anything else that you want to add, Rob, before we close out?
No, I not really. It was a great segue, I think, from Esposito to Maloney as we roll through those late '70s Rangers teams.
Yeah.
And the impact they've had on the Rangers culture. And I think it's great that we're still talking about them.
Absolutely, and maybe one player we can talk about down the road at some point, a player that was part of the Mafia Line that particular year, who had a tremendous impact on the Rangers as a rookie coming into the league. And, I don't think this is hyperbole. Along with Ricky Middleton, Donnie Murdoch could have had the opportunity to become one of the greatest Rangers of all time, just the skill level and the goal-scoring ability he brought to that club. And it's unfortunate that he left it really all off the ice as opposed to on the ice. And so maybe that's a player that we can look at, down the road a piece. But, yeah, well, Rob, thank you so much for, helping me out today as usual. My co-host, Rob Berger. Until next time, this is Tom Browning. This concludes episode 13 of the Forgotten Hockey Players of Broadway. Thanks for pressing play. Thanks for tuning in. Thank you for listening. This has been a Go Tommy Boy production.